Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions. And today we're going to talk about your most precious commodity, which is time management for practice owners, and how can you balance patient care and business duties. And we're talking with our specialist here, Jamie Schreier, PT. He is the founder of Practice Freedom U, and he coaches and helps entrepreneurial practice owners all over the U.S. To grow their practice. So he's helped hundreds of growth-minded practice owners achieve uncommon success without the burden of working excessively in their clinic. And today he's going to talk about time management for practice owners and how owners can balance patient care and business duties. And I'm really looking forward to this because Jamie had a awesome insight in a blog I recently read about this, and so we got to talk about this on the podcast. So welcome, Jamie. Great to have you on the show again.
Yeah, Neil, so glad to be here with you and dive into some time management talk.
Yeah, so we both are very familiar with this, being practice owners in the past, and it is a juggling act. So why is it so difficult for practice owners with time management? What do you find as you coach practice owners?
Well, I think this the simplest thing, and if anyone could just walk away with one thing today, I'm going to give it to you right now. To grow, you must let go. It's really that straightforward. I won't say it's simple. It might be simple, but it's certainly not easy. But anytime we're going to grow our practice, we must have the time and the bandwidth to do so. And because I've never met, I don't know about you, but I've never met an owner that was reaching out to me to talk to me about possible coaching or getting some help or advice or whatever, that wasn't already busy,
Mhm.
that didn't have a to-do list that was pages long. So it really starts with, can we let go? And it's hard for us to let go,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you had your practice, I had my practice. Nobody does it better than us, man. I mean, we're the GOAT, right? We're the greatest in our business. And it's hard to let go of the things that maybe we think people can't do as well as us. And I think that mindset, that perspective, and of course the action of keeping it on our plate, it just keeps piling. So more is coming and fewer is leaving, and eventually, the time just gets all eaten up. So I think that's really number one.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just so true in life in general, right? I mean, whether it's our personal time or it's business time, um, you the it's about time management. What are you doing with your time? How are you being productive? And then when you own your own business, it kind of takes that to a whole new level. And if you've never, done that before, you definitely are like you said, you're the number one. You know how to do it, and at the beginning you have to be right to get your feet underneath you and get the practice going. You are it. You got to make it
Right.
go. But then you get proficient at it, and then you get other things piled onto you, and before you know it, you're stressed, right? You're burned out. You're feeling all these pulls in different directions.
Hmm.
But I've definitely experienced that in my practice, and then as we've grown practice promotions to over 80 staff, it's been a lesson learned also in your own journey of letting go. But I would say letting go with the no, right? So we sometimes we can get a little like, oh, I can't let go because I don't know what would happen. But you can delegate, you can let go, but you can know what's happening, right? And that it's being done properly. And I think that's part of processes and systems too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've done a lot of research and just work and exploring. I love psychology. I don't. I think I'd be a psychologist probably, although sometimes I feel like I am. And I like kind of getting to like the deeper root of kind of where this is coming from. And think about this: we started our educational journey, school, when 4 years old, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some earlier, 4 or 5 years old. School created our schedule. Like I went to kindergarten, I went to the AM session. It was 9 to 12, right? So I showed up 9 to 12. And then you get older and you go all day from whatever, 9 to 2:30. Then you go to high school. Then you go to college. Little more flexibility, but you still have classes. Then you go to PT school or whatever other school that you go to in your industry. Everything's structured. Then you get your first job. Guess what happens? The boss determines your schedule. And then you open up your own practice. It's up to you to determine your schedule, your treatment schedule, your personal schedule. How do you balance the two? You've had zero experience doing this for 30 years potentially, and now all of a sudden it's like a wide open blank sheet, and you got to figure out how to do that. That's why this becomes so hard, because everything else was just focused on all we had to do is do what we were being told to do, show up when we show up, leave when we leave. So we don't know how to manage our time with respect of, well, how much do I do in the business, or how much do I do patient care, or how much do I do with marketing, or whatever, how much personal time I have. And unfortunately, because we're hard workers, Neil, we know how to work. And what typically ends up going is all of our personal time, all of our free time, a lot of time with, the people that we say are most important to us, our family, yet we spend the least amount of time with them. So you kind of look at it from that perspective. And, at least for me, it's like, okay, I see why I do what I do. And I realize in order to move forward, in order to grow my business and also have the life I want, I gotta use a different way of operating and looking at my time versus the one I was basically taught and influenced my whole life.
Yeah, that's great. And at the beginning, and also different parts of your business, you are the most important part of the business, right? And if you don't take care of yourself, and as you're saying, like you don't invest in your personal time, right? You don't have that balance, right? And you get off balance, and then you're no good to anybody because you're kind of stressed out and you're feeling the pressure, and it's harder to make the right decisions when you're in that,
Yeah,
mindset.
and you and I both know it's easier said than done.
Hmm.
But you know what? I can push through anything. That's my mindset. I can just keep working. I can just keep doing it. Nights, weekends, whatever I got to do to get over the hump. The problem is we don't get over the hump, or we think we're getting over a hump, and now our business is a million, million five. There's a different hump.
Hmm.
So it's like what you said. It's about, and this is to answer your question as well. It's about creating boundaries. It's important for us to create boundaries in our time. There's a word, and I'll talk about this more in a few. There's a word that we have really a tough time saying. The word is no. We're yes people. We are people pleasers. We are altruistic helpers. We want to help other people. That's why we're in this field. Yet when we say yes, what we're saying no to a lot of times is our personal freedom, which
Hmm.
is why, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I called my company Practice Freedom, because ultimately that's what we want. That's why we want in the business to have the freedom and the flexibility to do things the way we want to do them. Yet we're saying yes to, okay, I'll do this. Yep, I'll do the supplies. I'll clean the toilets. I'll treat. Yep, I'll go out and market. I'll make all these decisions, and it's really really exhausting, and it's impossible to grow the way that we all want to build and grow our company.
Hmm. That's a great point. I've heard that before, in other gurus and coaches out there, that it's really the things that you say no to that help move your business forward, which is really a
I
fascinating
learned it.
concept.
I wish I could take credit for it, but yes, I learned it a long time ago. And because I'm a very slow learner and hard-headed, I understood it, but I didn't apply it for a long time. And once I started to apply it, I realized how uncomfortable it was to say, hey, Neil, I'd love to be on the podcast. Right now, I'm focusing on XYZ. Can we circle back in a few months?
Hmm.
To be able to say that it's hard when it's like, sure, yep, 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 yep. You start saying all these things, and then, no wonder we have a massive to-do list. And then, like you said before, it's hard to show up high energy, powerful, mind sharp, creative, on point if we're just wearing ourselves down. You just can't show up in that, what is popular now and has been for a little while, in that flow, in that zone. You have to have time. You have to have what I like to refer as space, white space in your world and on your calendar.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's a really important part as a business owner is having that thinking time, right? You can't problem solve, you can't create, right, the future for your business and different departments within your business if you're just in the go all the time, right? You don't have that. I like what you said, that white space
Yeah.
that you got to give yourself some freedom for. And I think too, like what I've seen is I've personally experienced this is that it's not you're not trying to achieve this rainbow vision of being totally free on the beach and that's what your life is going to be being a practice owner, a business owner, right? It's like the goal is to have the freedom to be as much as in the business as you want, right? Or not to be, right? And that gives you a choice, that gives you freedom. It's when you're forced to be like the all-encompassing person and the amount of work that you have to take on that becomes stressful. And there's times, let's face it, we all have times in our business where we're going to have to put more work in. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves, jump in. There's something, not going right in the business. We got to like steer the ship back on course. That's business, right? That's entrepreneurship. There's always going to be that in the future, and you just have to realize it. But there's, how can you get back into the calm waters again, right? And have things flow until you have to jump back in the next time. So, but if it's always dangerous waters, that's where we see the burnout in the practice owners and they want to sell their business because they're just not happy where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, good point. I adopt a mindset, and the mindset is based on Stephen Covey's work, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I believe it's habit number 2, it could be 3. And he talks about this idea of begin with the end in mind. And, again, another one of those concepts that took me a while to adopt. Now it's part of everything I do. And I think one of the mistakes we make, and one of the mistakes that we can fix and avoid, is get clear in what does this look like when it's at the point that you want it to be. I won't say done, but it's looking at the outcome of things. It's really counterintuitive because most of us are just problem solvers and we jump in and we start figuring out stuff versus pausing. I remember having you when I was doing some workshops. I remember you were in there and I was like, what are you looking at? I asked you this question and you started thinking, and you came up with this idea, then you went back and you had this poster made of the whole thing. And who knows, where you're at now, 80 plus people. I think at the time, maybe you're at 10, 15, whatever you were, employees. But you had thoughtful time, whether you call it strategic planning, whether you call it thinking time, you had thoughtful time to actually look at, well, what is it that you want? What is it that you look like? A very wise person once said to me, he goes, Jamie, you can't make meaningful decisions in the present without a meaningful future. So too many owners are trying to make decisions right now, but they don't know where they're going to. And the decision, if it's going to be effective, has to be aligned. So this idea of, so you have a practice, whether you're just starting, whether you're years into it, what is it that you want? Where are you going with this? And then as Simon Sinek talks about, let's establish the roots of it and say, well, why is this important to you? Then go back to the beginning to start putting in the foundation of what you have to do right now to start moving towards that picture. Without that picture, you're just making random decisions and you don't know if they really align because there's nothing to align them to. And I think that's really a big thing when it comes to time management is let's get clear on what you're trying to do, because then we can make more aligned, more strategic decisions that will save you from then going back and fixing something that you caused.
Mm-hmm.
I look at I call it just the power formula, and it's like, our thinking determines our decision making, our decisions determine our actions determine results. If you're not happy with the results, first of all, get clear on what you want and then go backwards. So what actions we have to take? Well, it depends. What decisions am I going to make? It depends. How do I think about the problems I'm seeing in my business? So mindset is so huge. I know it's overdone. It's about as overdone as the word leadership, but it really is critical. And how do we think about the problems in our business? How do we think about what we're doing, our staff? Because when you start to shift that even a little bit, it produces massive results.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's something that I've seen many, many times when practice owners come to talk to us for marketing. And marketing is one of those areas in our practice that we in our practice we try to like shotgun it, right? Like let's try something new, or let's chase this shiny object over here. What's the latest Facebook ad, or this kind of thing over here?
Yeah.
And so they don't have that strategic decision part of it. The thing is, hey, we need more new patients. Where it's like, okay, well, how many new patients do we really need to get? All right, and then what's the effort that we really need to do that? And then how are we going to leverage, the way that we're found online? How are we going to leverage mechanisms through our website? How are we going to get patients to come back for care, send their friends and family? How are we going to make doctor relationships, like all these critical areas? And then from that, have your actions that you're going to take in each one of those areas. But what we see is that people say, hey, I need new patients yesterday, and I saw something shiny here on Instagram. Let me try it, sign up for it, and then all of a sudden they're, spending a boatload of money, and it's not really getting them any traction because they're just trying all kinds of actions without the strategic part of it at the front end.
And what's interesting, that behavior, if that's how they think about marketing, guess what? They're thinking about their operations, their hiring, their retention, their financials. They're thinking about everything because your whole construct of how you think goes to everything that you have to deal with in your business. So rarely do I see like all these things are working great, but this is the problem. Because if it really was the problem, there's tons of strategies out there. You could type into YouTube or Google. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. So it can't really be the strategy per se. There has to be a level of, like you said, there has to be a level of how does that owner think about the business? Because if I'm calling you to say, hurry up, I need people like yesterday, that angst is not going to give you the time needed to really establish an effective program that's going to help them in the immediate future and also the long term. So a lot of times we make these short-term decisions that seem to be good for, a few weeks, a month, or a couple months, and then they don't work, and we think the reason it didn't work because it wasn't a good strategy. So let's go to the next strategy, the next strategy. Next thing you know, we put a lot of money into stuff, wasted a ton of time that could have been on something else. And now we have a distrust, and we say the things like, that doesn't work. And the reality is all this stuff that people are teaching works. The question is, what do you specifically need to put in place to get where you want? That's a different level of how to approach a business. And from a coaching standpoint, that's exactly what we're doing. And then it's like, okay, so you need help with marketing. Well, let's look at Neil and see what they're doing, see how they help, and see what our budget is, and see what we want. Because I guarantee if that person came to you that was really clear on that, I imagine that would make your job easier to help that person versus someone coming in, hair on fire, going, I need help. And you're like, time out, calm
Yeah.
down. We're not going to go that way because I don't want to be the next person that you say, that didn't work.
hmm Yeah, and as I've said in the past too, like our highest performing clients, like the top 10%, they're really good at that. Like, this is where we need to go. Like, and here's our strategy, and here's what we're thinking. And, it's not this immediate fire that they're needing to quench, right? They're looking way into the future, and they've got the time to do that, right? They kind of built themselves the time to do that. So let's chat here a little bit about what our audience can do as far as smart strategies they can start to work on to manage their time better and see how can they craft this important time in their business for running their business.
Okay, so there's a few strategies that I thought about when you and I were talking, and I think one of them goes along quite simply with what we just said. You got to define your priority, right? I'll say T's for everyone, but remember that the word priority in itself is singular. Yet, I did some research on this. I think it was like maybe 50 years ago. We just started using it plural. Like, how do you actually have multiple priorities? That's a priority is there's a singular.
Good
So I
point.
got in there. This isn't a psychological lesson.
Oxymoron, right? Yeah.
So getting clear on what the priority is. In order to get the clear, just go with me for a second, people that are listening. if you want to know what the priority is, you have to understand what is it you're trying to get to. So if the priority is, well, we have to focus on, let's say, hiring. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to bring someone in so I could reduce my time treating so I could focus on more marketing. And in order to do that, we have to get better at putting a process of recruiting in. And I know you were sharing your Market to Grow program. So then you can narrow, by thinking through the multiple steps, you can narrow it down to our number one priority is really establishing an effective recruiting mechanism, whether it's looking at our ad, maybe expanding our reach, or trying something that maybe did not work before and looking at a different thing. You can narrow it all down because that one thing will then set a cascade of events that will help you move towards your goal. That doesn't happen. Quite often, a lot of people don't have, or they don't have one priority. They have like, well, what are you doing? Well, we're focusing on this, this, and this. I said, that's great. How's that working for you? Well, it's not working well. Well, how could it? You're already busy doing your core day to day, week to week. And now you put on top of that 8 different projects. It's hard to say no to something. So we have to make sure we're clear on what's most important. And Neil, that's not always easy because it all seems important now. But when you're able to step back, even if you don't have a mentor or coach, you could do this on your own. You kind of step back and you just have to get out of that clinical mindset and saying, okay, what are we trying to do here? So setting that priority is just critical. If you can't do that, it's going to be really hard to create enough time to then spend on more strategic planning because you're not spending the little time that you have on at least focusing strategically on where to focus your time that you do have.
Mm-hmm. And what are you seeing as you talk to different practice owners as far as when you whittle down what their priority is, what do they truly come out to be? Like
Well,
what's...
yeah, if you step all the way back, um, if we're talking about money problems, we're talking about financial problems, the first thing I look at is where we're losing money. So I would start, the priority would be, okay, where are we potentially losing money? And we start looking at our collections process. We look at how much is in AR. And what's interesting to a lot of people that I've talked to, it's, well, we have some measures, we have some EMR reports, but I don't really look at them. I'm not really sure what they all mean. So I'm like, so how are you making decisions if you don't have any objective data? And they're like, well, I mean, I kind of know. And I was like, well, what if you're wrong though? How much money and effort and frustration is it going to be if you're wrong? So we always like to get a really clear picture of what's going on and let some of the objective measures determine. So
Mhm.
that for most people, like when we start working with a client, especially if the client is established and like over 750 or 800,000 in revenue, it's okay. I hope that you know what's going on, but I don't want to roll all the dice on that because you might be off. Let's get clear on your numbers. Let's get clear on your metrics. Neil, that alone is a huge task for a lot of people to get accurate measures. But
Mhm.
once they do, it becomes so easy then to know, you know what? I thought we were having problems with referrals. We're not. We got plenty of referrals. They're not converting to a new patient. They're not converting to a plan of care. Our cancellations are at 22%. If we focus on tightening up that, all of a sudden more money comes in and it didn't cost you any more. And you can do it confidently. So that's a lot of times where you want to get clear is there some objective means to corroborate your story of what you think the priority is?
Mhm. That's wonderful. Yeah, and I can't agree anymore because it's just such an important thing to make decisions off of data, right? And there's so many times I'm sure that as you work with clinics that they think it's one thing, but it's really another, right, for them. And until they have that right information in front of their face, then they go, oh wow, it is over here. It is this problem. Let me put my attention and some plans around that. So I love it that you talk to
Accurate data.
accurate data. Yes,
A
that's true.
lot of people have data and
Yeah.
you're like, well, how did you come up with that? And it's like some crazy formula that's not correct. And I said, can you imagine if we spend time on solving that? that's not actually a problem,
Hmm.
but the way you were doing it, the data was wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen that more than
Well,
more than I can count.
here's a marketing story for you. So this happens quite often where the front desk is asking the patient, "How did you hear about us?" Right? And they might
Mhm.
say, "Hey, my doctor sent me," or maybe my friend,
Right.
or I came on Google or whatever. But the reality is, when you look at the data, the tracking data, like it was, maybe their doctor recommended PT, but then they actually went to Google and Googled different therapists in their area, and then they came across your clinic and they saw an ad, and then they went to your Facebook, and then they talked to a friend about you. And we just got to realize that, and especially from a marketing perspective, in today's world, it's just like omni-channel. Like everybody, you have to be everywhere. I mean, people are going to make decisions off of 7 or 10 data points.
Right.
But if you're just making your decisions for what your marketing plan is going to be based off of what the patient says at the front desk, that, like you said, could be the wrong kind of data, and you're making the wrong decision based off of that. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying there, Jamie, about that. But I do like what you said about priority versus priorities, right? And it doesn't have to be a priority that's, yeah, maybe it'd be a long time, right? Or it could be something you do in a quarter.
I like operating in quarters. I just think 90 days is so much time to get something substantially done and implemented, but it's not so far in the future that you're like, "Ugh, it's never going to come."
Yeah.
So 90 days seems to be that perfect thing, and from a lot of people that I follow over the years, it seems to be a pretty well accepted time frame. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
you can't have a 30-day goal or even a one
Right.
week, but 90 days should be a meaty enough objective that it can help you start making decisions of what do we need to focus on right now, today, this week, to start moving towards that 90-day priority. I'll tell you a quick mistake that I made. When I started coaching, I allowed people to do 3 to 5 goals or 3 to 5 objectives every 90 days. And what invariably happened is they would just choose all kinds of different stuff. And at the end, we would go back and measure, and it'd be like, well, I got a little progress here, and I didn't get to this. And it's like, you know what? I think we need to narrow this. So now they have to convince me of more than one. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, convince me with like a lawyer mindset argument more than one. Because what I've realized, the bigger problem is they don't know what is more important than something else. So they just put them all as goals, but there's not any plan to actually achieve any of them. This takes thinking, and thinking takes energy. And if you don't have time, and what you're doing day in and day out is sucking your energy, then you just make just quick-witted solutions. But unlike the solutions you make for your patients, you don't have the experience you do knowing that you're putting all these things together to make that decision for your patient in 2 seconds. Your business, you don't have that yet. So you're trying to use what you're doing for your patients to your business, and so many times those are not good decisions, and they just suck up the time that you have.
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
I've heard that from like a psychology standpoint before, that the if you look at your staff, right, the ones that are like your top performers, right, I
Mhm.
think one thing to really look at, and what can you apply to yourself, and that is the ability to prioritize. And so when someone is very good at identifying what is the most important thing to do right now, and they do that, it could be a simple action, could be more complex action, but you look at any employee that you have that's really a top performer, very good. If you look, they're very good at prioritizing their day, right, or their actions in a way that they can get the most important things done and accomplished, and then they have time for the other things as they go along with the day. So I just remembered that from kind of maybe a psychology class back in the day, but I think it does make a lot of sense when we're talking about time management and priorities.
Yeah, it's like that singular focus, right?
Yeah.
Like they become focused. And I'll tell you who ruins the focus of the team, the person who's not focused, which would be the owner. How many
Mhm.
times, and you might have been guilty of this, I know I was guilty of this, and sometimes I still catch myself. I'll say, hey, Neil, so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on doing this thing. All right? Yep, I got it. 2 days later, I forgot about that thing. Now it's the next, hey, Neil, hey, listen, can you do this for me? Or, hey, we really got to make sure we get referrals down. By the end of the week or two, you got like 6 different things running through your head. You don't know which ones you really have to focus on. And then you get, quote, in trouble at the staff meeting, and you're like, all right, well, I'm doing the best I can. And then people wonder why people are leaving. Oh, you're great. Thank you so much, Neil, but I'm going to go over here
Mhm.
because they don't feel good about what they're doing. They don't feel like they're succeeding. They feel like they're letting you down. This comes from the chaotic nature of the owner, especially in smaller businesses like under 2 million, million and a half. Under that, the business owner does not have a clear understanding of those things. And when they do, they can start to slow down and calm down and be more intentional, not just what their time is, be intentional what they're saying to the team, which is critical. You're one thing. The team, that's a whole different thing. You don't want to give them more than one direction.
Very good point there,
Oh,
Jamie. Absolutely. And so one of your next strategies here you talked about was time blocking. So embracing time blocking, and what does that look like for a practice owner?
yeah. So time blocking, the way I look at it is um, concentrating things together. So I used to work 6 days a week, right? I mean, I couldn't say no. Person wanted to come in 7 in the morning on Monday. Person wanted to come in 9 o'clock on a Saturday. Like I'm working all over the place, completely inefficient. But you know what? I know how to treat. I know how to work. Get money, and that was my mindset. And what I started to realize is, especially as I started hiring people, I was like, my time's more important than anyone's because there are things that only I can really do and do well. And treating, yes, I'm good, but there's other people that can do it. But like some of the stuff we're talking about, thinking and strategic thinking and connecting with people and opportunities, that's where I need to be. So what I decided to do is say, well, what if I squeezed, let's say, 4 days a week? But I did a hard four. Like, I don't care if I'm working 8 hours or 10. Like, once I'm there in the clinic, let the patients keep on coming. But I'm taking off Friday and Saturday. So Friday morning, I would begin to focus on kind of administrative stuff. I'd have my meetings on Friday. I would focus on looking at some of my stats and KPIs. Then I started looking at, well, how could I concentrate maybe grabbing another day, so like a Wednesday. So then Wednesday, I was able to focus a little bit more on marketing activities. So I started to concentrate different activities, starting with patient care. And then if you're already reduced patient care, you can do this with kind of administrative. I think staff meetings should all be together. If you're in the mindset of a staff meeting, have all of them back to back to back. Don't have one here, one there, one the next day. It's so difficult getting into a flow. Maybe people have heard flow, Steph Curry, basketball player. He's in the zone, he's in the flow. Well, these companies are all investing so much money into human beings getting into a flow, operating almost on a subconscious level, producing crazy high results. And all of us have been in that flow, in that zone. You don't get into zone by changing tasks. So you're looking at tasks that have a similar focus. This is a fact, this is research. It can take up to 20 minutes for your brain to shift wholeheartedly to a new task. You might think you're shifting, but your brain is still focusing on that previous thing. So, be able to concentrate similar tasks is how to chunk or reduce activities, which then opens up time that you can focus on some other things to further reduce some of the stuff on your plate, which I can talk about next.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love what you did there and how you kind of gave yourself the days to work on admin tasks, and then you kind of expanded upon that as you got comfortable with it, right? And your staff got comfortable with it there too. And I think that is a very critical thing, especially if you're in a small practice and you are seeing a lot of patients. Is the worst thing you can do is just give yourself like an hour a day to work on admin tasks and stuff. You're much better off putting that time together and giving yourself 3 or 4 hours in a week in one chunk to, like you said, get your mind focused on that, and you're not distracted by what the next patient's coming up with and what you got to handle. So that way that your time blocking is done, you can focus on patient care on those days that you're doing patient care, but you got to have that time carved out and a significant amount of it in order to grow your business.
Yeah, I'll share one quick story. So I realized I was just all over the place. Like, I knew I was coming to a head of, Jamie, you just can't keep operating like this. You're killing yourself, and it's causing so many problems at home and relationships. Like, I knew that, and I started to learn some of these strategies. So I started, chunking time. But another thing I did is I paused. Pause was a huge thing. So when I went into a new patient, before I went into the room to do a new eval, I just paused and I said, "What do I appreciate about this person?" And it forced me to get present.
Mhm.
And from speaking to owners, being totally present here, dialed in, is a rarity. Our brain is somewhere else. Our brain is worried about financials. Our brain is worried about hiring, or our brain is worried about is our where's the next patient going to come from, and all of these things, and we can't get present. And then, of course, not being present, patients can sense it. Your staff can certainly sense it. And that's just kind of along those lines that you're saying. It's a big thing. So that was like a management strategy that I took to help me become present. And to your other point that you said, grabbing a half hour here and a half hour there, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Give me a bigger chunk of time. Give me half a day to handle all my bills, to handle the mail, to respond back to, stuff, to give me that versus a half hour, 5 days a week. I
Mhm.
promise you won't be anywhere near as effective. And again, it goes back, but it's hard saying no. It's hard putting a block on your phone, shutting the door, or just getting the hell out of the office and not even showing up and saying, "I'm off the grid for the next few hours."
Mhm.
It's hard because your mind goes, what if? What if something happens? What if there's an emergency? And then I'd be like what? Like what are you worried about? My place burned down. What was I gonna do about it? I was at the beach. I was driving home. My father-in-law called, said your place burned down. I was happy as hell. And my wife's like, "Why are you so happy?" I go, "I'm
Oh
not
my
going to work
gosh.
tomorrow. I
Oh
got I got a
wow.
snow day or a fire day." Like what do you think's going to happen that it's going to even matter? You're going to find out about it.
Mhm.
But it's like this impulsive, I need to know. I need to be sure. I got to have my phone here. My phone's off and face down. All my stuff on my screen right now is gone. You're the only person on the screen. Like we're operating in such a high alert phase, constantly distracted and interrupted. Do we know the greatest resource besides obviously our time, but the greatest thing that people are after trying to get from you is your attention. We're giving away our attention everywhere. So
Mhm.
once we recognize that, we can start looking at how do we protect our attention when everyone wants it, including our staff, including our patients. How do we put borders up, which is another strategy? Put borders, put absolutes
Mhm.
up. I am off the grid until 11 o'clock on Monday.
It's
Oh,
amazing how your staff will figure things out when you're when you're definitely not
amazing.
available, right?
Here's what really hit me at home. I was attending this seminar somewhere, and he's like, think about your staff. And I was thinking about him and thinking about who they are. He goes, do you realize they're old enough to vote? I'm like, yeah. They're out of college. I'm like, yeah. They're they can buy a car. They can buy a house. They can get a loan. Someone's going to give them a loan of 100,000 or multiple 100,000. Like your staff is actually capable of a lot of stuff, let alone degrees and all this other stuff. And you can't trust them ordering supplies or cleaning the toilets or some of these other things that are sitting on your plate just because you can't let go. Like, these people are capable of so much more than we give them the opportunity to do. And the real issue is, how about we focus more time on how to delegate something, which, by the way, is another strategy, to delegate something to someone else and help them ensure the success of that. And if you look up, delegation and process, there's lots of ways to create a process. We have our own way. It's not complicated. It's mostly, is that owner willing to let go and allow that person to be successful doing the thing? Because if they're not successful doing it, you're going to take it right back. So how would they be successful doing it? It shifts how you approach it.
And so how do you go about helping people understand, like, what are some good tasks to delegate or automate?
Oh, well, my favorite thing is I look at high value and low value. I also call this high energy and low energy task. So take a piece of paper, slice it down the middle with a pen or a pencil. And on the left side, type in low energy or low value task. And on the right, high energy or high value task. And start writing down as small as you can. Don't make it like two huge tasks. But specifically, if you look at day in and day out, what are you doing? And how would you characterize that task? So be honest, right? All progress starts by telling the truth. So be honest. You're doing bookkeeping. Do you just love it? Do you just have a sweet spot in there for it? Or do you just do it because reality, I don't know, I don't mind, I guess I can do it, or I really don't feel like paying someone to do it, that's why I'm doing it. Because if that's the answer, it goes on the low side. If it's something like, I really love just strategically thinking about my business. I really love, like, when I get time to just be away from everything and come up with ideas or connect with people and opportunities. Put that on the right side. What I guarantee you will find, if you've never done this, it will be like, what do you think, Neil? Like 90-10? 90% of your day is going to be low value or low energy, at least. Like, you'll have maybe a couple things you like. You'll put patient care because you're good at it and it's pretty easy for you and you enjoy the connection. But there's going to be so many other things a part of that too, including documentation, including ordering supplies, including all that other stuff. So if you start with that list, then it becomes, well, just to get momentum, what's the smallest low energy, low value task that you can remove or eliminate from your plate? And there's two ways, there's three ways to remove it. One is just, I don't even need to do that anymore. Why am I doing that? But aside from that, look at who can do this, right? That whole construct of who, not how. Who can do this that still gets a great result, maybe even better than me? And what would they need to be successful doing that? That's one. The other is, I'm curious if there's a piece of technology that I'm either aware of or unaware of that could potentially help me with this. And let's face it, with AI coming on strong, there's going to be a technology for, I guarantee, 99% of the low energy, low value task you have. There's going to be an AI technology that can help you. It's called AI Agency. It's already here. It's coming fast and furious, but the owner needs to be open to doing that. So start there, ask those questions, and then move towards removing it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if, it doesn't happen perfectly. Just be open, getting into the habit of just checking things out of your low energy box. I know you did it, Neil. I did it. I've never met a successful person, truly successful, not just money-wise, but also control of their time and their life, that didn't do this. Because it's impossible to have those things and hold on to all these things, especially things you're not good at.
Yeah. And a good friend of mine told me one time that, a practice owner or an entrepreneur, they buy their freedom, right? And so I think one of the hardest parts is really, like, it's the letting go, what you said at the very beginning. But like, you give the example of the bookkeeping, right? So there's people that are probably much better skilled than you are at bookkeeping, right? You're a practice owner, you're a physical therapist. And so yeah, you could save a few dollars and do it yourself, but what is that really costing you because you don't have your attention on those high value, high energy
Yeah.
activities, right? And so you're going to have to pay a little bit of money, right, to hire a professional bookkeeper, but that's going to give you the ability to make much more return on that investment that you're putting in. We see it all the time with practice owners that are trying to do all the marketing themselves, right? They think that,
Mhm.
hey, I can be a website specialist, I can be an SEO specialist, I can be a content specialist. Like you don't have time to do all of that stuff, right? You're running a business, and what I've definitely found in scaling a business is that the bigger the businesses are, the more vendors they work with, right? The more experts that they pull into their wheelhouse, because they know that they can't scale without experts that they're paying for their expertise and systems and things like that. So I think that's something for if you're that practice owner like on the cusp of going like 1 to 3 million,
Yeah.
then you have to invest in people and you have to invest in systems in order to get your business to that next level and let go and delegate.
It's really that simple. And really, that starts at about 400,000. Below that, it's just you and your show, self-employed. But once you start hiring, when we're working with people between like a half a million and a million, it's putting in those thought patterns. It's putting in those uncomfortable actions where you're still able to make money, but you're starting to learning. If we get people coming in at, 1.5 million, 2 million, it's like, look, there's things that you're doing in your business that we need a leadership team, a management team, and we need to incorporate more technology, and we need to really narrow down what this company is going to focus on and what they're going to be really good at, and what stuff we're going to quote outsource to either technology and platforms or vendors or whatever. If you have a vision of growing, and if it's a vision that is going to make your life better, because Neil, if they don't have that, and I've talked to people where they're like, I don't know, and I'm like, then what are we going to try to help you do if there's not really a reason why you want it and how it's going to make your life better? Don't just grow because you feel like, oh, I'm just going to do it. This takes a lot of work. So yeah, I mean, this whole idea of delegation, easy to say, it's easy to look at. I think you're referring to Dan Martell's buy back your time.
Mhm.
We're buying back our time one way or another. Either we're going to pay someone to do it, or we're going to figure out on ourselves, and it's going to be 10 times more expensive and take 10 times longer
Right.
to do it. But at some point, you have to invest to get back more time. Some people are willing, other people, fear takes over.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So
is
yeah, I think that comes back to, and I think this is a skill, right? This is a skill that you learn. So can you develop your skill to have an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset? And so, part of it too is our personalities and what we've grown up with, in our lives. And so even in some cultures, right, have more of a scarcity mindset and being very frugal, very protective of money. And I'm not saying that you're frivolous with money, but if you have an abundance mindset where you know that there's a lot of potential for things, right, and you go after those potentials and in a strategic way versus like, I don't know if we can afford to do that, right? That's more of a scarcity mindset. That's that a lot of that mindset can hold you back from where your business could really be and yourself from where you could really be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started moving away from the abundance and scarcity mostly because once everyone starts using it, I move away from it because it's just who knows what it even means anymore. But to your point, a lot of it is, how do you speak to yourself? How do you speak about your business? How do you speak about your staff? To make it simple, do you speak in a more positive way or a negative way? So I can't afford is a negative way of speaking.
Mhm.
I can't afford. I'm doing a talk later this week on mindset and how to increase profitability in your business. And there's a slide that says, here are the things that I hear a lot. I can't afford to hire, or I'm not smart enough to grow, or my staff will think I'm greedy if I take time off. And it's like, well, what if you could reframe that in a much more positive way, and say something like, well, how could I afford to hire this person? Or what would be the What would be the result in my life if I hire this person? Like you start to shift into moving towards of how to address this versus putting a blatant, there's no opportunity, there's no possibility. Because if you make a statement like that, I can't, or what, your brain, which is the most creative, innovative machine in the world, is not going to try to solve a problem that you just said there isn't none. There's no solution. But when you start to put questions in your head, and this is how you get over, by the way, limiting beliefs, you start to question it. You start to put rationale. All of a sudden, you look for possibilities and opportunities. And when you start to think like that, and I'm sure you've run into these people, whoever's hearing this now, you're like, man, my friend, they're doing this, they're creating this. Like you have a new program. Well, you're thinking about it, you're questioning, you're like, I'm curious, what could we do to help solve this problem? Anyone can do it. And yes, it is a developed skill. It isn't someone's lucky or someone's born into that. It's a developed skill, but it takes reps. It takes reps, and it takes knowing when you're doing it. That's the hard part. We don't even know we're doing it because it's an automated habit.
Right.
So we have to get out of the habit by instituting a new habit.
Love it. Love it. So let's continue here. And you'd said in looking at your time management, it's really important to regularly review and adjust. So can you speak to how a practice owner needs to do that?
Yeah. So one of the most powerful teachers, the greatest teacher each one of us has, is not your professor in school or the person you went to high school with. The greatest teacher we have is our past experiences. And too many times we are constantly focusing on the future of what we haven't done yet. Right? Oh my God, I hit $1 million mark in our business. Yeah, but I really wanted 1.5 million. Or I'm really looking at this. Yeah, we hired a great person. Yeah, but I really want another great person. Are we going to be able to do that? And we constantly put us in what Dan Sullivan, very well-known entrepreneur coach, talks about, this gap, this negative place. And anytime you compare yourself or against other people, or compare yourself against this ideal that you haven't reached, you fall into that place, which is not creative. The way against that is to look backwards, is to measure your progress, to measure your results backwards. So your past experiences, if you start, we call it debriefing the past, but it's really reflecting, or whatever the other word is that's used, but looking back helps you learn tons of lessons. So a simple thing that we do is, I just call it did well, do better. So no matter what, like on this, when we're done with this, I'll be like, oh, what do I think I did well? Next time, what could I do better? Be more prepared with this, be more concise with this. Oh, share this story. Whatever it is, you're constantly using your experiences to gain lessons to then grow from them. So when people come to us and they go, well, Jamie, I mean, I've worked with coaches in the past. It didn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, what did work? Did all of it not work? Well, this was helpful and this was helpful. Okay, what would you like to see that would help you move past, well, this and this? I'm like, okay, what if we could focus more on those things? Like, that's just, example off the top of my head. So that's one of the most powerful things, Neil, is reflecting or debriefing either a time frame, like how did things go in the first quarter, or a particular project or an event. How was our seminar that we put on, our workshop that we put on runners? And anyone can do this. This is not just for the owner. So when you start getting comfortable with it, you make sure it becomes a part of everything that you're doing with your team.
Awesome. Yeah, so important there to use that positive mindset, right? And look at what you have accomplished in your work and in your practice, and use that to springboard forward. And then I think finally here, you talked a lot about, so we talk about time management within the business, but what about as individuals, right? As personal growth? What are some of the things that you like to focus on there?
So we are conditioned, and we all bought in that in order to be a great clinician, a great clinical professional, we can't leave school thinking we know it all, right? We have to continue to learn. evolve, grow, try things, learn from them, all that. So imagine applying that same attitude towards your professional growth as an entrepreneur, as an owner. What are you doing to advance your ability as an owner, your skills as an owner? When asked, and I do take surveys, it's extremely low. Maybe they're reading a book, maybe, but are they focusing on how to be a better communicator? Communication is such a huge part of being an effective leader. Well, how effective of a communicator are you? I know for me, this was a big one. I wasn't very good at all. I was confusing. I wasn't clear on my expectations. I was sarcastic as a son of a bitch. I used my sarcasm to hide how I was really feeling. I wasn't direct. My empathy was shaky. I was more empathetic with my patients than I ever was with my team. These are all things that I worked on over the years and got better and better and better. And I continue to work on them because it's never ending. So it's having that never ending personal growth of how can I get better, not just as a clinician, we're good with that, but as an owner and a leader. A question that I love to ask clients is, what skills would I need to be successful at this future level? So what skills do I need that I don't have right now to help me have a $5 million company? Let's say you're at 2 million. So it forces you to think about, okay, so in order to be there, I'm going to have to be better at this, this, and this, and this. And now it starts giving you a roadmap of things that you can do to become that. It's like we're making up what we want and then focusing on doing what we have to do to get there. And it's just a wild thing when it happens. And I know you could speak to that as an entrepreneur. I mean, this is how it's done. It's not more complicated than that, but it does take some effort and some courage to do
Right.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jamie, you share some wonderful advice for us today, thinking about how we can leverage our time better in our practice to help us grow our business. Is there any final piece of advice that you would have for our listeners out there?
Yeah, I mean, again, I gave you a lot of stuff, and we have the adage more is better, but I don't. My adage is less is more. So if you just walked away with one thing, I think I said it in the very beginning, in order to grow, you got to let go. And I think the way to do that is just start by blocking out a chunk of time every week, even if it's 60 minutes. Just once a week, not a day, 60 minutes out of the office, not at home either. That's not the most creative place for most people. And just give your time to think about this. Think about what you heard today. Think about some of the challenges you're facing. Just give your brain time to just really be more thoughtful. And I promise you, there'll be things that start to get clear for you. So just blocking out that 60 minutes a week is a great place to start.
Love it. Awesome advice. As always, Jamie Schreier here, super expert. And don't forget to check him out and see what he can do to help elevate your practice with practicefreedomu.com. Is that the best place for them to?
Practicefreedomu.com. I'll share a link with you if you're interested in coaching and getting some help and guidance to kind of create a plan and create accountability to build your business. Then certainly open to have a phone call with you to see if or how we can help.
Absolutely. And there's tons of free advice on there too. So it's Practice Freedom, and the U is in the letter U .com. So great stuff there, Jamie. And thanks to all the audience for taking the time to listen to us today. I hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for future episodes. And also check out our YouTube channel, where you can learn about Market to Grow and lots of other great training that we have on there to help you elevate the marketing in your practice. And also on practicepromotions.net, we got tons of great free downloads for you and advice and marketing tips on there to help you grow your practice. So Neil Trickett here from Practice Promotions and the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.